Y'all saw the title for this. Let me do the regular intro though. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. Y'all saw the title to this though. I just know I'm kind of dreading this. I don't know why I do this to myself. The last time we checked out Cryptopsy, we did an entire album review of None So Vile, and yeah, it was not my cup of tea. I think that's kind of an understatement, but it's also kind of true as well. It's a very over the top style. Now, granted, that was the 90s too. They released a brand new song earlier this week, and that's what we're going to be checking out today. The song Until There's Nothing Left. Now, if I remember correctly, the album comes out in June 20th. It'll be called An Insatiable Violence, which, yeah, I mean, that's a Cryptopsy title right there. Kind of what I expect from them. But let's see what these death metal masters are bringing to the table with their most recent and first single off of their upcoming album. A lot of use of dissonant harmony in order to transition between sections. Dude, that cry was like pure white noise. What? Oh, that snare polyrhythm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is an interesting little, very little bridge. Oh, well, this is the continuation. So there's a very little bass-focused section. Interesting solo. step trills, man. I like that. Although now I'm kind of second guessing myself. Were those half step trills? I don't know. I might have to go back and listen to that real quick in a moment. Just that final section. So when I say half step trill, trill is more of a aerophone uh, word. It would be just quickly going back and forth across two notes. That's the trill part, which in guitar terms would probably be hammer-ons and pull-offs to get that softer legato sound, a smoothness of transition between the notes rather than a harsh picking. And when I say half step, that's just two closest notes. If you look at a piano, it's the white and the black key next to each other. So if you just bounce between them, that's the sound that I think I heard. But right at the very end, as the drums were cutting out and we were getting just to like those last three or four notes before the door closed and the music abruptly stopped. I wonder if that's going to be on the studio version because if I listen to that ending a couple of times, that's going to be the ending for me. Any deviation from that's going to feel weird. um, but I wonder if they're going to fade out on the studio rather than have the abrupt cut. Anyways, though, as everything was starting to fade out and I could hear the guitars more clearly, I think that was just really quick picking, and the slight variation in pitch was due to the strumming. So I'm not entirely sure if that's what that was. I mean, like I said, I'm going to give it another listen before we wrap this up. I'll give you all confirmation in about 15 minutes or so when I'm done talking and pause to look at some lyrics. If I can confirm it too. I was pretty vague right there. So anyways, music. What's going on here? It's Cryptopsy. End of review. I'll see y'all later. This feels more extreme than I remember from None So Vile, but it captures a lot of that same energy. It's fast, it's rambunctious, it's noisy, there's a lot of fast guitar work, there's a lot of fast drum work, there's growling, there's screaming, there's fries. It's intense, it's in your face. There's a lot of pentatonic harmony in here, which creates that general metal sound, but there's also a lot of dissonant harmony in here, where the two guitars will purposefully play two notes, still really quickly, but the two notes are going to be an interval that creates a lot of dissonance or tension. It's going to feel awkward or tense or anything like that. I tend to, when it's played this fast, you don't really have a lot of time to feel it. But if they were to hold these out, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I really appreciate the speed. You kind of get the spice of it without the full flavor. It doesn't overpower the song in any way. And, that's generally speaking, that's what's going on in this track. And I wish I could tell you structure, even. I have such a tough time keeping up with Cryptopsy. Not necessarily because of the general speed of their playing, but because a lot of it feels the same to me. They're playing so fast that I don't necessarily hear the notes, I get more of the emotional impact of it. And the emotional impact of the song is pretty consistent, which means I have to rely on vocal cues and drum patterns to kind of gauge, is this a verse or is this a chorus? And I kind of picked up the chorus part. That's when that really high fry scream white noise thing comes in. We heard that at the beginning. We heard it in that final section. I'm pretty sure that's a chorus. But as far as everything else goes, that can't all be verse. Of course, we had the bridge where the bass gave us that lead section for like 8 bars, and then a little bit of a transition into the guitar solo. That's definitely a bridge, but that leaves like 40-50% of the song to be split up between verses 1 and 2, and that makes the beginning feel a bit lopsided, especially since I don't recall hearing that verse come in again until the end of the song. So, honestly, it gets a little blurry for me there in the middle, as my sonic cues begin to just get swept up into the flurry, the whirlwind of the song. Even the drummer, like I mentioned, when the guitars are going too fast, and the bass, we'll talk about the bass in a second, but everything's kind of get swept up. I gotta lean on the drums and the vocals. And the vocals are aggressive a lot of the time, lots of fast moving delivery through there, and a lot of growls, which is why the Fry scream ends up being a bit of a landmark for me. Like, oh, I know where I am now. I've heard this scream before. But a lot of it is just faster growls. I don't really have a lot of landmarking I can do with that either. This is a song that's going to take a couple of times through to get the structure of it. Because, like I said, I was going to say to get it, but I get this song. It's furious, it's flurious, it's a whirlwind. But the drums too are just a bit too chaotic in here to really keep up with. And it's honestly a good thing from my perspective anyways. One of my favorite things when it comes to drumming is a lack of rigidity to it, a lack of repetition. I'm sure there are patterns going on with the drum stuff, but for the most part, this drummer is bonkers. By the time I finally got around to understanding what the drummer is doing in any given section, they have implemented some sort of wild drum fill to take me into a new pattern. It feels like the drummer is consistently reinventing the time feel of the song, and there's even 3 places in here with some wild polyrhythmic time feels too. There might even be more, I just didn't pick up on them, but there were definitely 3 that I picked up on, and it was absolutely bonkers. I love those moments. The song feels like it is just a whirlwind pace, and then I get to latch on to, I'm like, oh, a polyrhythm. This feels different than everything else. And it's those, but they're all isolated. It's not like we do the same polyrhythmic pattern. It's not so much of a landmark as much of me being able to grab onto a pole for a second before I get thrown back into the tornado. I have found a way to stop my body from spinning for a brief moment. And you know, a lot of these descriptions of being lost, of being swept up into a whirlwind, of a frenzious song. I don't think that's a word. I just made it up, coining it right now. Frenzious. This is Cryptopsy. This is what I remember from None So Vile. I don't remember the album being quite this fast. This is blistering. This is very high energy, and it blows my mind that we are probably 30 years past None So Vile, if I remember that right, as a 90s album, right? And they're still able to do this. I mean, that blows my mind, man. I mean, I'm sure, daily practice helps. I wonder, well, I'll look into that later too, if they've taken any breaks in these 30 years or if they've just keep releasing stuff. Although this is only their 9th album, I think is what I read. So, depending on what album None So Vile was, that's still not too bad. That's an album every couple of years, every few years or so. Anyways, yeah, this is just at a blistering pace, and so while I find the intensity to be new for them and quite overwhelming, it's what I was expecting from them, and it's the type of music they make. It feels over the top at times. It feels ridiculous. I'm sure the lyrics are going to be beyond gross. That's just what I'm expecting. But like y'all said in the comments for None So Vile, let me put that up there. Y'all can go watch that reaction if you want. It's a lengthy one. Probably, I mean, it was a full album, so probably like a 2 or 3 hour video. If that's your thing, go check it out. You can watch me squirm for 3 hours as I listen to this ridiculous music. But that's kind of the thing of it too. It's like an over the top campy horror flick where you're kind of there for the fact that it's not grounded or rooted. You're there for the ridiculousness of it. And that's kind of what y'all kind of told me Cryptopsy, at least None So Vile, was about. Where I was taking it very seriously rather than a little bit of tongue in cheek. And my serious take on it was probably the wrong way to go about it. I'm going to try to be a little looser with the lyrics on this one. Like I said, I'm kind of expecting them to be pretty wild, but maybe they've softened up over the years too. I don't know. None So Vile, they were pretty young when they made that, if I remember correctly. So, with age maybe comes restraint. Let's find out. I'm going to go listen to that riff again. I'm going to read some lyrics. We'll come back and discuss both of those. All right. After a couple more listens and putting the video at half speed, I'm still not entirely sure. The video shot, which is just like a second and a half, does have a lot of finger movement, but it seems to be all over the neck on multiple strings, and that doesn't seem to match what I'm hearing there. So I wonder if that visual doesn't match the sound. I kind of want to see a live playing of this, a guitar playthrough or something now. But the more I listen to it, I'm still not sure if we are. I hear a fluctuation of pitch, but I don't know. Maybe it's a production trick too. I don't know. I like I said, I want to see a live playthrough, guitar playthrough, live on stage or something. I want a good shot of what the guitars are doing because I can't tell by ear at this moment. One other thing I wanted to bring up though, I noticed while looking for scenes of the guitarist playing, I noticed the entire video is black and white except for chromatic aberration, creating a magenta and cyan hue around specific edges. I didn't really catch a pattern to when this was used or why, but I think it's an interesting use of color. Usually chromatic aberration is used to enhance a color scene. I don't think I've ever seen it used to enhance a grayscale scene. That's very interesting. I think it looks nice too. It's a cool little accent detail. As for the lyrics, as usual with Cryptopsy, I wish I hadn't read them. However, it's more of an allusion towards things than an explicit statement of things that have happened. I don't want to necessarily say that this is Cryptopsy softening up at all. For all I know, the rest of the album is gory and brutal. But the concept here is still... I wish I had a little more context. We basically have our narrator, though, who sets a trap. Something that causes someone to go to them that they can't ignore. He says, the lines have been set, now I sit back and wait, eager for somebody to come and take the bait. The net is wide, spread across the web, I must confide that it's the weight that I dread. I think this is interesting, talking about the World Wide Web. Also, it's the internet, bringing all this together within almost a fishing metaphor. He's already said that he's cast the bait out. He says the line has been set. You can also fish with nets. So I think this is an interesting way to start this. But basically, he sets all this up. And he's waiting for someone to come. And finally, he says, I get a hit. Also another fishing term. He says, this is when I get excited. My mouth begins to drip and the fire in my loins ignited. At this point, I was really scared about where we were going with this. I did not need to know about the fire in his loins. But we're still being vague here. He talks about the trap being a filthy one, and I'm the only one who knows what it is. Everyone else will be surprised by it. And now you're trapped here, and I'm the one you were told to fear. My lies have you intertwined within this cage, and as you can now clearly see, you're totally mine. We're almost halfway through the lyrics here, and it's still kind of vague and focused on one thing. Our narrator set a trap and caught someone. He says this is the only true pleasure where one suffers more than the other. And I think that's an interesting phrase. He doesn't necessarily derive pleasure from someone else's pain. He says the only way for anyone to get pleasure is for one person to suffer more than another, that both people are suffering. I find that to be a really interesting idea. Philosophically, anyways, I'm not going to say I'm too interested in the philosophy behind it, but it is a wild worldview to have. Usually it's pretty common, I would say, that specific people in the world derive pleasure from the suffering of others. I think that's a pretty common phrase I've heard many times, and I think it's easy to kind of apply that to the world if you kind of see who's had power and what they tend to do with that power. But the idea that everyone suffers and pleasures derived by suffering less than someone else kind of takes that and puts a little spin on it that I've never heard before. That's where I find my intrigue with it, is that it is a fresh perspective and a twist on something that I find rather common. But anyways, he goes on to say, interlaced within your mind, untruthfulness has you contained within my hive. There's a lot of syllables on that second line there, and untruthfulness is an unwieldy word that really could have just been lies. Lies have you contained within my hive. Then you can keep that long I sound. It really makes me wonder why he went with untruthfulness on that one. But then he says, my silky velvet words have you confined. And I love this because the vocals here are anything but silky smooth. At this point, though, I realize there's no chorus lyrically, so I'm kind of curious what repeated pattern I heard on the vocals that I assumed was a chorus. But I think that just adds to the general flurry and whirlwind of the song that even for a brief moment that I thought I understood what was going on and thought I had found a pattern, there's a chance that I didn't. It was some false hope there. But he says he's going to use his words until there's nothing left at all to gain. So he's just going to break this other person mentally. He says, once you realize it's too late, I'll have already moved on. I cut the strings and watch you fall. I jeer as panic takes over. I giggle as you start to bawl. The final step of this horrific, hostile, torturous acquisition. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, that wasn't too bad of a set of lyrics. You know, there's definitely some elements to it that are a bit more harsher to read. But for the most part, you know, he set a trap. Someone fell into it. There's implied torture, and then he lets them go after they've been mentally broken. And then Cryptopsy pulls the rug out from under me. I skim through bare-skinned images of you in weird poses. I marvel at how easily I got you to spread open. You just couldn't let it be, could you? Now, granted, I did say it was vague. I suppose I asked for this. I wanted some more content to this, but I really wanted the content and the clarity of context around why more so than the what. But I didn't clarify, and that's my fault. I kind of wanted to know the purpose of all this. The idea of setting bait on the website and pulling people into this. I mean, you could have a semi-noble idea behind this. I mean, you can catfish for like predators and stuff like that. A bit more of a positive spin of, you know, pulling people out of the internet, out of their shadows into the light with well executed traps. But I think from this story, since I have no context of this other person, I think the story deems them to be anyone or no one even, and that it focuses on the torturer, which makes them, I think, to be the villain here. There's nothing redeeming about what they've done, and they don't explain any context to why they've done anything that could paint them in a more sympathetic or heroic light. I think at the end of the day, they just like to torture people, especially after we see the worldview of deriving pleasure when others suffer, more than themselves, more specifically. And that's just, I mean, that's a Cryptopsy track right there. It really, this is the kind of stuff I had to deal with on None So Vile, so I don't know why I do this. There are so many other songs that came out this week. Why did I pick this one? I knew what I was getting in for. Those are my thoughts. Cryptopsy's Until There's Nothing Left. What'd you think of this song? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to this song or correct me on if I was wrong about anything? How do you feel this compares to some of Cryptopsy's best work in the past? Let me know that, as well as any other thoughts you have, down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Yeah, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to release a bonus video to finish up a theme from a couple weeks ago that I got sick and couldn't finish when it was actually that theme. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, we're going to do an album review like always. Interesting thing about this album, it's one song at 60 minutes long, and I've been instructed to just sit through the whole thing, that there's no good stopping points on it. So I will be taking very detailed notes as if I were hired to critique a draft of an album, and we'll kind of go from there. So we'll see how well that works. I use this process on my Frost Life in the Wires album reaction, which went well, but I was grouping that into 20-minute chunks, which is a little better than a full 60-minute album. But we also did Bell Witch, Mirror Reaper in full as well, and that was like 80 minutes, and I think the reaction to that and analysis was pretty well thought out too. So, you know, I got a handle on this. It's just I don't do this too often. It always kind of worries me going into a full 60-minute reaction. But it will be fun, I think. I don't even know what genre it is. If that sounds interesting to you, drop on by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Sunday we'll have the live stream at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as usual. All right. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.